Imagine the year is 1664. A bustling port city, not in France, but on the shores of South America. Cayenne, the heart of French Guiana. The air is thick with humidity. The sounds a mix of French, indigenous languages, and the cries of exotic birds. This small colony, carved out of the vast South American continent, represents the fragile beginnings of a sprawling empire, one that would eventually span the globe and leave an indelible mark on the world. The French colonial story is one of ambition, rivalry, exploitation, and ultimately, lasting cultural exchange. A story we'll explore today. The initial seeds of French colonialism were sown in the 16th century, driven by the same forces that propelled other European powers: the desire for wealth, power, and the spread of Christianity. Early attempts at colonization in North America, particularly in present-day Canada, were halting and fraught with challenges. Jacques Cartier's voyages in the 1530s laid claim to vast territories, which would become known as New France. But establishing a permanent presence proved difficult. Religious conflicts at home and the harsh realities of the North American wilderness hampered sustained efforts. These early ventures were more exploratory than exploitative. It wasn't until the 17th century, under the reign of Louis XIII and his powerful minister Cardinal Richelieu, that French colonial ambitions truly began to take shape. Richelieu, recognizing the economic potential of overseas possessions, chartered companies like the Company of New France, granting them monopolies over trade and land in specific regions. Samuel de Champlain, often called the father of New France, played a crucial role in establishing Quebec City in 1608, which became the center of French power in North America. From Quebec, French explorers and fur traders ventured westward, navigating the Great Lakes and the Mississippi River, claiming vast swaths of territory for France. The French presence in North America centered around the fur trade. Unlike the British colonies, which were heavily populated with settlers seeking agricultural land, New France relied on a smaller population of trappers, traders, and missionaries who worked closely with indigenous populations. The coureurs de bois, independent fur traders, played a key role in expanding French influence, often forging alliances with native tribes like the Huron and Algonquin. However, these alliances inevitably brought France into conflict with other European powers, particularly Great Britain, who also had designs on North America. The rivalry between France and Britain intensified throughout the 17th and 18th centuries, culminating in a series of wars that shaped the future of North America. King William's War, Queen Anne's War, and King George's War all saw the two powers clash in the New World. With control over territory and trade at stake, the most decisive conflict was the French and Indian War, which lasted from 1754 to 1763. This war, a theater of the larger 7 Years' War in Europe, saw the British ultimately defeat the French, leading to the Treaty of Paris in 1763. Under the terms of the treaty, France ceded almost all of its North American territories to Britain, including Canada and the vast lands west of the Appalachian Mountains. While France lost its vast North American empire, its colonial ambitions were far from extinguished. During the 17th century, France had also established a presence in the Caribbean, acquiring valuable sugar-producing islands like Saint-Domingue, modern-day Haiti, Martinique, and Guadeloupe. These islands became incredibly lucrative for France, fueled by the brutal exploitation of enslaved Africans. The plantation economy thrived, producing sugar, coffee, and other commodities that were in high demand in Europe. The French also established trading posts and colonies in Africa, including Senegal and Madagascar, setting the stage for future expansion. The French Revolution in 1789 and the subsequent Napoleonic era had a profound impact on French colonialism. The ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity, while initially embraced in France, proved difficult to reconcile with the realities of colonial rule. The Haitian Revolution, led by Toussaint Louverture, was a direct consequence of the French Revolution, as enslaved people in Saint-Domingue rose up against their French masters and eventually declared independence in 1804. Napoleon's ambitions in Europe also led to the temporary loss of some French colonies, as he focused on conquering the continent. However, after Napoleon's defeat in 1815, France once again turned its attention to rebuilding its colonial empire. The 19th century witnessed the resurgence of French colonialism, driven by economic, political, and strategic considerations. The Industrial Revolution created a demand for raw materials and new markets, while the rise of nationalism fueled competition among European powers. France expanded its presence in Africa, conquering Algeria in 1830 and gradually extending its control over much of West and Equatorial Africa. In Southeast Asia, France established French Indochina, comprising present-day Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. This expansion was often achieved through military force and diplomatic maneuvering, exploiting internal divisions and rivalries among local populations. By the early 20th century, the French colonial empire was at its peak, second only to the British Empire in size and influence. It spanned vast territories across Africa, Asia, and the Pacific, encompassing millions of people and a diverse range of cultures. However, the seeds of its eventual demise were already sown. The First World War weakened France and fueled nationalist sentiments in its colonies. The interwar period saw the rise of anti-colonial movements, demanding greater autonomy and independence. The Second World War further accelerated the decline of the French colonial empire. The fall of France to Nazi Germany in 1940 undermined French authority and emboldened resistance movements in the colonies. After the war, France faced increasing pressure from the United Nations and international public opinion to grant independence to its colonies. The Algerian War, which lasted from 1954 to 1962, was a particularly brutal and divisive conflict that ultimately led to Algeria's independence. Throughout the 1950s and 1960s, most of France's colonies gained independence, marking the end of the French colonial era. The legacy of the French colonial empire is complex and multifaceted. It left a lasting impact on the political, economic, and cultural landscape of the countries it once controlled. While colonialism brought infrastructure development and access to education and healthcare in some areas, it also resulted in exploitation, oppression, and the disruption of traditional societies. The French language and culture continue to be influential in many former colonies, while the economic ties established during the colonial period persist to this day. Understanding the history of French colonialism is crucial for understanding the contemporary world, as its effects continue to shape international relations, cultural identities, and global inequalities.